4 states. Over 20 mysteries America forgot to mention. Places that look ordinary until you hear what happened there. From Georgia's ghost roads to Idaho's silent hills. Welcome to the strange side of America. I'll take you through 5 of Idaho's weirdest places. Each one holds something that won't quite let go. 1. Crystal Gold Mine. The Crystal Gold Mine looks ordinary at first glance. Just a forgotten cut of rock above Kendrick. Its tunnels fenced, its entrance eaten by moss and time. But around here, people talk about the light. Back in the late 1800s, the mine was booming. Gold dust turned neighbors into rivals, and workdays stretched into nights lit by oil lanterns. One evening, a miner named Amos Reed stayed behind to finish a section before payday. The next morning, the mine was silent. A cave-in had sealed the lower shaft. They never pulled Amos out. Weeks later, when the mine reopened, another worker said he saw a flicker of yellow deep inside a lantern bobbing in the dark where no one dared to go. The foreman ordered everyone out. That mine shut down within the year. Over a century later, hikers still talk about that same faint light. It doesn't move like a flashlight. It sways slow, deliberate, like someone's working by hand, deep underground. Dogs whine when they pass the old fence line. Locals leave coins on the rocks, a miner's tribute. Some call it superstition. Others say Amos just kept to his shift. Whatever it is, no one goes near the tunnels after dusk, because every small town has one ghost that refuses to clock out. 2. Silver City. Tucked into the Owyhee Mountains, Silver City was once the loudest town in Idaho. By 1880, its saloons glowed all night, its streets filled with miners, gamblers, and drifters chasing fortune. Then the ore ran dry. The noise left, and the town froze in place. Today, Silver City is a ghost town literally. Visitors who stay overnight at the old Idaho Hotel say they hear footsteps pacing the second floor, though every room is empty. In the saloon next door, locals tell the story of the lady with the empty glass. They say she was a barmaid named Claire, waiting for a lover who never came back from the mine. After he died, she returned every night, sitting in the same chair, pouring one drink, never touching it. When the bar closed for good, someone found her dress folded neatly on the counter and an empty shot glass beside it. Now, on moonless nights, travelers claim they see her seated at the old bar back, turned, hair pinned high, glass in hand. If you blink, she's gone. But the bar mirror stays fogged, like someone just exhaled on it. Even skeptics admit the air feels heavier there, like someone else is still deciding whether to stay. In Silver City, the gold's long gone, but the waiting never stopped. 3. Devil's Pulpit. There's a cliff in the 7 Devils Mountains where the earth seems to drop out from under the sky. They call it the Devil's Pulpit, a natural column that overlooks the Snake River Canyon. It's the kind of view that makes you forget how small you are until you realize something's whispering your name. Centuries before the name Devil's Pulpit, this was sacred ground for the Nez Perce. They told stories of 7 evil spirits who tried to claw their way to the surface and were turned to stone. The mountains you see today, they said, are those very spirits frozen mid-struggle. Modern hikers tell a different story. When fog rolls in from the river, voices rise with it. Not screams, more like pleading. Come closer. Over here. And they always sound familiar. In 1986, a park ranger reported hearing a young boy crying for help near the overlook. He searched until dark, found nothing. The next morning, they discovered footprints leading toward the edge, then stopping. Others have seen a lone figure on the rock's edge, arms spread as if preaching to the canyon. He vanishes when clouds move. Whether it's spirits, echoes, or the mountain itself speaking, no one really knows. But locals agree. At Devil's Pulpit, you don't answer the voices. You just listen and leave. 4. Garden Creek Trestle. In Canyon County, rust and cedar frame an old railroad bridge over Garden Creek. The line's been dead for decades, but the trestle still stands half wood, half ghost. They call it the Crying Bridge, and it's not just a nickname. Long ago, a train derailed on that curve, plunging into the creek below. Among the dead was a young woman traveling to meet her fiancé in Boise. Legend says she survived the crash, but when rescuers reached her, she was searching frantically for her lover's body. She never found him. Weeks later, they found her shawl tied to the bridge railing. Ever since, drivers who parked beneath the trestle claim to hear soft sobs drifting down with the wind. Walk the tracks at night and you might hear footsteps behind you, heels on steel. Then a whisper, "Wait for me." In 2014, a pair of paranormal investigators recorded what sounded like a woman humming. The sound cut off the moment one said her name aloud. Coincidence? Maybe. But in this part of Idaho, coincidence is just another word for story. People leave flowers by the bridge in spring, not because they believe in ghosts, because they respect sorrow that old. 5. Kelly's Hot Springs. Near Kuna, where farmland meets desert, lies Kelly's Hot Springs, a place that looks harmless enough. Pools of mineral water bubble gently between cottonwoods, the air smelling faintly of sulfur and sage. But locals say the springs heal one thing and take another. Before settlers came, native tribes used these waters for ritual cleansing. Some say the spirits never left. In the 1930s, a man named Eli Parker built a bathhouse here. He vanished within a year, leaving only his boots by the pool. Since then, strange things have followed the water. Soakers tell of feeling a hand press gently against their back steady, guiding only to turn and find no one. Others claim to hear whispering through the steam. One woman swears she saw a child's face ripple beneath the surface, eyes open, mouth moving like it was trying to speak. Skeptics laugh it off as wind and heat, but ask any local rancher, they'll tell you to say thank you before you leave the springs. It's not fear, it's courtesy, because the water there listens and it all answers one way or another. Even scientists studying geothermal vents here admit the springs sometimes pulse in rhythm, as if breathing. Maybe that's the earth, maybe it's something older. 5 places, 5 echoes of lives that refuse to fade. A miner who never left his shift, a barmaid who waited one night too long, a mountain that speaks in lost voices, a bridge that still remembers love and loss, and a spring that listens back. Individually, they're legends. Together, they paint a picture of Idaho as few see it, a landscape where history never really stays buried. These are not the loud, tourist-ready hauntings of Hollywood. These are quiet hauntings, the kind that come as a chill when the road bends out of sight, or as a whisper that sounds a little too much like your own name. Ask anyone who grew up here and they'll tell you, weird isn't rare in Idaho. They say Illinois keeps its secrets under polite skies, soft cornfields, tidy suburbs, polite porch lights. But some corners of the state whisper back. If you listen, you'll find stories that won't let go. Here are 5 places Illinoisans point to with the same low voice they use for funerals and family recipes, the sort of stories you don't tell at lunch. Each one is a small geography of feeling. 1. Bachelor's Grove Cemetery. There's a patch of woods in Cook County called Bachelor's Grove, a cemetery swallowed by trees and rumor. By day, the stones tilt beneath moss. By night, the place becomes a long, slow exhale. Locals say the cemetery doesn't so much haunt as remember, and it remembers people in motion. The stories are small, precise, and repeated with the accuracy of a recipe. People driving down the narrow lane tell of headlights finding a grave where no path leads, a car engine that dies in the middle of nowhere, and the sudden appearance of figures crossing the road in slow silhouette. Some visitors say they've watched glowing orbs lift off the ground and drift up through the oaks like disturbed moths. Others describe photographs taken at dusk that later include faces or lights that were nowhere in the scene during the shot. A few longtime neighbors insist the place is a mirror. It reflects whatever the living bring there. Grief, joke, curiosity, and it returns a quiet version of it. One woman who grew up near the grove remembers as a child a man who came at night to polish a headstone that never bore a family name, the way one polishes a brass door knocker out of habit. He said he came because the name deserves to be seen. No one in town claimed the stone. It sat, year after year, a small white rectangle beneath vines. In this way, the cemetery is oddly ordinary. People tend graves, they leave coins, they carry buckets of water, The strangeness is less theatrical and more domestic, a place where the living continue conversations with the absent. Bachelor's Grove doesn't scream, it invites you to remember. 2. Manteno State Hospital. Drive south toward Manteno and you'll find the hulking outline of what used to be the State Mental Hospital, a complex of red brick pavilions and long colonnades built when institutional care still meant isolation. The hospital closed years ago, but the stories haven't moved on. Locals speak of long corridors that hold an air like old books, dust and a sense of routine. Former staff and patients told tales of whispered names, of wheelchairs moving by themselves down empty halls, of a recurring scent of talcum or old soap that arrives without wind. A nurse on night duty, now an old woman who still cuts a figure in town, told her grandchildren about the patient who kept rewriting the same letter, page after page, addressed to a woman no one could find. He would fold the letter, tuck it into his shirt, and wander the wards until he fell asleep in the dining room. After the hospital shut, residents visiting to salvage bricks or memories say they found stacks of those folded letters in a locked drawer, the same handwriting, the same unending address. The Manteno stories aren't meant to frighten tourists. They're warnings about how institutions store memory. Buildings collect habits, the rhythm of staff rounds, the clack of rubber soles, the soft chime in the day room. When the people leave, the housework of those days tends to linger like a ghost of a schedule. Some who went in to photograph the empty rooms came out with trembling hands and a respect that felt like apology. Manteno's oddness is civic and somber, a monument to the way we cared and the way we didn't. 3. Voorhees Castle. Out in Piat County stands a house that looks like it belongs in a storybook builder's regret. Turrets, steep roofs, and an air of having been important once. Voorhees Castle sits on a lane people still give directions to, as if keeping a story alive required repetition. There are versions of the house's tale, a love that soured, a child who died too soon, a family that left in a hurry, but everyone agrees on the tone, a persistent, domestic sorrow. Walkers tell of hearing a piano lift through open windows when the room is empty, of lullabies that stop at the threshold. Children dared each other to peek in the long curtained windows at dusk and report the sight of a rocking chair that moves for no one, like someone stands and sits in a slow private cycle. Friends of the last family to live there say the matriarch kept a habit of placing a fresh handkerchief on the guest room pillow each evening. After she died, neighbors found that handkerchiefs continued to appear, folded small and white, as if someone still made the bed. Voorhees Castle's oddness is domestic and tender, less an accusation than a ritual. It's a house that remembers how to be hospitable to an absent collection of people. People in the county treat it like an elderly neighbor, waved to, not pried into. It feels like being in the presence of someone who has not yet closed their hands on what they once held. 4. Munger Road. There's a stretch of Munger Road that curves near an old rail crossing and a gravel lot where teenagers used to pull over to confess dares. The legend here is practical and stubborn. A spectral bus, a woman in white, footsteps on the rails. The stories can sound like local variations on the same theme: longing, mistake, the clumsy edges where life spills into rumor. Drivers say that on certain nights, the air thickens over the track, and you feel for a moment like you've stepped into someone else's memory. 2 teenagers told the same tale years apart. They parked on a dare, lights off, and in the gloom, a school bus appeared out of nowhere at the other end of the lot. Its doors were closed. No one sat inside. When one boy reached for the bus, the brakes squealed as if in life, then the bus vanished. Another time, a woman walking home swore she heard a child calling from the tracks, and when she went to help, there was only a scattering of baby powder on the ground, nothing else to explain the sound. Munger Road's legends are rite and rehearsal. They are stories told by people whose town squares are too small for big tragedies. 5. The Witches' Castle. Near Chicago's edge, among the oaks of a public park, lie curved stone walls and a ruin most visitors call the Witches' Castle. The name sounds theatrical, but the neighborhood keeps the stories soft. In winter, the structure looks like a fossil of a grander age. In summer, teenagers leave palms of graffiti and coins in the hollows. The legend is simple. Once, long ago, an eccentric owner built an elaborate home whose courtyard gathered moonlight and rumor. After an untimely death, the house fell away and became a place where kids dared each other and couples pledged secrecy beneath ivy. Over time, stories accreted. People saw figures at windows that were only open air, heard voices when the park was empty, and left tokens for answers. An elderly couple who walk there every Sunday morning tell of a time they found a small circle of pebbles arranged like a child's careful ring, and a little note, "Don't tell." They covered it with their own scarf and walked away. The witch's castle is not a site of terror so much as a place that received many small confidences. It's the kind of ruin that's best handled like a rumor. With curiosity but also discretion, people leave it alone because they know names can stick when you try to force them. Maybe these places aren't just haunted. Maybe they're holding on. A cemetery, a hospital, a house, a road, a ruin, each one remembering what people tried to forget. In Illinois, weirdness isn't loud. It waits, patient as an old neighbor watching the weather. So if you ever visit, don't go chasing proof, go quiet, listen. You might not find ghosts, but you might feel the echo of something that still matters, because here, stories don't die, they linger, and sometimes that's the closest we ever get to forever. What about you? If you could visit just one, which place would you dare to step into first? They say Indiana is pleasant when you drive it slowly, the way a good neighbor takes time to sip tea. But under that polite surface lie corners that will not let the past be tidy. Tonight, I'll walk you through 5 of Indiana's weirdest places, the sort of spots locals nod at and then lower their voices. These are not sensational attractions, they are small geographies of stubborn memory. If you are 50 or older, you may already know how a single house or a stretch of road can carry a family's mood for generations. Keep that patience with you, we'll need it. 1 Rose Island. Across a stretch of the Ohio River, a low island once hummed with the accidental grandeur of summer. Rose Island was a park before anyone called it vintage, a Ferris wheel, a dance pavilion, arcades, a trolley line from Charlestown. Families came on Sundays and stayed until the lanterns were cold. Then the flood of 1937 and a slow economic drift emptied the island of its crowds, and the rides rusted into skeletons that never danced again. There's a local woman, May, who remembers running there as a girl. She told me decades later how she learned to waltz on the pavilion's warped boards and how the smell of salt water from the river mixed, oddly, with cotton candy. Once, May said, we left a paper hat on a bench and thought nothing of it. The next morning the hat was gone and a penny lay where it had been, like someone had come and settled the bill. That is the kind of story people tell about Rose Island, domestic, precise, and slightly rueful. And now you find small artifacts embedded in the soil, bottle caps, a rusted bolt, a child's token. The park is a collage of weathered concrete and tilted foundations. Locals swear that at dusk you can sometimes hear a faint music, like someone tuning an unseen organ. Scientists will tell you it's wind in the reeds. People who grew up there say it's more like memory assembling itself, a band practicing between worlds. Rose Island's oddness is gentle. It is the feeling of a world paused mid-song, waiting politely for the next measure. The place asks nothing of you but a little silence and the patience to let the past fold around you like a familiar shawl. 2 Devil's Backbone. If Rose Island is a paused song, Devil's Backbone is an older, more stoic arrangement, a narrow limestone ridge rising above the Ohio, a spine of rock where the land seems to strain toward the sky. It is a place people have watched from for centuries. Indigenous travelers, early settlers, geologists with clipboards. The name itself feels like an instruction to pay attention. There's a story of a young couple who used to meet on the backbone after church, their hands tucked into each other's pockets while the river turned like a silver belt below. In winter, when the fog sits low, people say the ridge hums. Not with wind, but with small voices, mid-range and human. A retired ranger told me that hikers sometimes come back from the backbone shaken, not because the trail is hard, but because of a sudden sense of presence, the feeling of being overheard by a history not yet finished. Anthropologists note that places where many paths cross tend to accumulate stories. Devil's Backbone is one of them. Survivors of storms tell of cairns built and rebuilt, rock-laid tolls for safe passage. People who follow those cairns know to add a pebble or a small coin. The ritual is modest, but it keeps something tethered, a human hand on a long, indifferent geology. The ridge does not spook you. It simply remembers how many feet have stood there, and it minds the count. 3. Hell's Gate. Every small town has a place where daring and superstition meet. In the Wabash Valley, there is a stretch of road known as Hell's Gate, a low tunnel where rumors piled up like sediment. Teenagers grew up racing into its throat, counting off superstitions. If you drove through all 7 gates, they said, something would hitch itself to your shadow. Years ago, the rite was brash, and the dares were told with laughter and cigarettes. But rites calcify. Parents tell the story now in the tone of a confession. Their children came back breathless, hair askew, eyes too quiet. An old station master recalled a freight derailment there in the 1940s, and with it, an electrical hum that never left the beams. People claim the hum answers to movement, that the tunnel keeps a ledger of those who have dared it, and will remind you softly if you forget your manners. The interesting thing about Hell's Gate is how ordinary most of the evidence is. A pair of footprints in the mud that no one can match, a dent on a railing placed with care. If you drive it by day, it is just a cut in the earth, a place for trains and trucks. But by night, the tunnel collects a different kind of traffic, stories. These stories are not trying to frighten you. They are rites of passage reframed as warnings, a community's way of saying, be careful how you claim the dark. 4. Abandoned speedway amusement ruins. Indiana loves its summer rituals, fairs, stock car races, the smell of hot oil and fried dough. There are speedways and water parks that once packed Sundays with noise. Over time, some of those places fell out of use and returned to their plants. The grandstands collapsed into seating for birds. The midway became a poem. One local man, Hank, who used to work the scoreboard at a county speedway, told me how the final race had ended with a summer lightning storm and how management never reopened afterward. He said the scoreboard froze on the last lap, the numbers a stubborn relic. People come back and find the same sequence of objects, a rusted program wedged into a seat, a child's sneaker on a stair, a plastic ticket with a date. Those tokens are fragments of attestation, small proofs that a life once unfolded there. These ruined parks don't roar at night. They hold a memory like a person holds a breath. If you stand in the ticket booth and shut your eyes, some claim you can almost hear applause like a receding tide. Scholars who study memory and place call this residual sound, and they are as fascinated as anyone. But for locals it is simpler. Summers left their mark and the mark remains. The amusement ruins teach us how the economy pauses and how a communal ritual can become an object lesson in absence. 5. Mound State Park. Finally, Mound State Park offers a different register of mystery. These earthworks are not recent curiosities. They are the handiwork of indigenous builders centuries old. The mounds themselves speak a language of time, a deliberate shaping of earth that carries ceremony and observation embedded into landscape. Local historians and the elders of several nations have told the same thing. The mounds are patient teachers. Walk the terraces and stand in the bowl where people once gathered, and you will understand how human intention can shape silence. Many visitors say they feel steadier there, as if the heartbeat you thought was your own is matched by something underfoot. There are also harder stories of displacement and of places taken in ways that plantation and city records later record as progress. Those are not romantic tales. They are part of a longer, difficult memory. The mounds are a ledger of presence. They say clearly who was here first, and they insist that we remember what followed. The weirdness here is not spooky, it's moral. It asks us to feel the weight of our history, to listen and to answer. Across these 5 sites, a pattern repeats. The stories survive because people keep telling them, not on stages or screens, but in that low domestic voice over kitchen tables and church basements. They are not theatrical haunts. They are echoes of real lives. They teach us to walk softly, to listen more than we look, They remind us how grief, joy, and everyday routines can settle into a landscape until the place itself begins to answer back. And if one of these places ever calls to you, if you feel that quiet urge to visit a river island at dusk, or to stand where an old scoreboard froze mid-race, remember 3 things. Be small in your curiosity. Bring respect instead of hunger for spectacle. And leave something modest behind, a penny, a folded note, a simple greeting, because these places don't reward loudness, they reward attention, the kind that's gentle, like tending a neighbor's garden while they're away. Have you ever felt a place watching you? Like the air itself knows something you don't. Georgia, the land of peaches, history, and southern charm, hides places that'll make your heart skip a beat. Some are beautiful, some are tragic, and some are so strange, they make you question if reality took a wrong turn somewhere down the road. Today we're exploring the 5 weirdest places in Georgia. Trust me, the last one might just haunt your dreams. 1. Bonaventure Cemetery. If cemeteries had personalities, Bonaventure would be that elegant woman in an old black dress, graceful, quiet, but with eyes that have seen far too much. Tucked away on the outskirts of Savannah, this isn't your typical graveyard. It's a sprawling garden of stone angels, moss-draped trees, and marble faces that seem to follow you as you walk by. Sunlight filters through ancient oaks, and every gust of wind carries whispers you can't quite explain. But what makes it truly weird isn't just how stunning it looks, it's the energy. Locals say you can feel it the moment you enter. Some visitors claim their phones die for no reason. Others talk about hearing children laugh when no one's around. And then there's little Gracie. She died young in the 1800s, and her statue, carved so perfectly it looks alive, sits by her grave. People leave toys, candy, even coins. But here's the eerie part. Some say if you take one of those offerings, Gracie appears in your dreams, crying. Bonaventure isn't just a resting place. It's like time froze, and the spirits stayed to keep watch. Beautiful, peaceful, and deeply unsettling, all at once. 2. Old Car City. Drive north to the small town of White, Georgia, and you'll find something that feels like a rusted dream, or maybe a memory that nature decided to keep. Welcome to Old Car City, the largest classic car junkyard in the world. Over 4,000 cars, Chevys, Fords, Chryslers, all parked in crooked lines, slowly being swallowed by the forest. Trees grow through windshields, vines crawl over hoods, sunlight hits the chrome and throws strange reflections into the woods. What's weird is how alive the place feels. Every car has a story, a life once driven, a song once played on the radio. Now they sit in silence, collecting rust and secrets. The owner, Dean Lewis, calls it a memory forest. He's right. Walking through it feels less like visiting a junkyard and more like wandering through time. You start imagining who once sat in those seats, who turned those keys. And after a while, it's not the cars that feel haunted, it's you, because you start realizing how fast things and people are forgotten. Old Car City isn't just weird, it's hauntingly poetic, a graveyard of dreams still standing in the woods of Georgia. 3. Pasaquan. Now this one's pure madness. In the tiny town of Buena Vista, hidden behind fields and pine trees, stands a place that looks like someone built a temple after having a conversation with the universe. It's called Pasaquan, and it was created by a man named Eddie Owens Martin, or as he called himself, St. Eom. He claimed he had visions, that beings from the future visited him and told him to build this place as a portal between worlds. And so he did. For nearly 30 years, walls covered in neon paint, giant faces, swirling symbols, mosaics, spirals. Everywhere you look, color explodes. The patterns don't make sense, but somehow they do. It's like walking inside someone's dream that doesn't want to end. Locals thought he'd lost his mind. Some called it art, others called it witchcraft. But when you stand there, surrounded by his creation, you start to wonder, maybe he actually creation. You start to wonder, maybe he actually saw something we can't understand. St. Eom died decades ago, but his masterpiece, this strange electrified universe, remains. And if you stand still long enough, the wind there almost feels like it's trying to speak his language. Pasaquan isn't just weird, it's otherworldly, proof that sometimes madness and genius live in the same house. 4. Providence Canyon. When people first see Providence Canyon, they call it Georgia's Little Grand Canyon. Red, orange, and pink cliffs cut deep into the earth, stretching across the horizon. It's breathtaking. But the story behind it, a disaster in disguise. Back in the 1800s, farmers in the area didn't know much about soil erosion. They plowed and planted without rest, season after season, until the ground began to crack, then collapse. Over the years, the land literally fell apart. What started as small gullies grew into massive chasms, some more than 150 feet deep. And that's how this canyon was born, not from nature's patience, but from human neglect. Now Providence Canyon stands as a beautiful reminder of how badly we can scar the earth, and how strangely stunning those scars can become. It's the kind of place that messes with your emotions. You feel awe and guilt at the same time. You stand there thinking, we ruined this? And yet it's one of the most beautiful sights in the state. Nature doesn't hide her mistakes, she turns them into lessons. Providence Canyon is one of them. 5. The Doll's Head Trail. Now let's talk about the weirdest one of them all. Deep inside Constitution Lakes Park, just outside Atlanta, there's a trail that's unlike anything you've ever seen. It's called the Doll's Head Trail, and it's exactly what it sounds like. Doll heads, everywhere. Heads stuck on sticks, eyes staring from trees, broken toys arranged like shrines in the dirt. The first time someone told me about it, I thought they were joking, but it's real. The trail was started by a local artist named Joel Slayton, who wanted to turn trash left in the woods into art. So he began collecting old doll parts, bottles, scraps, anything washed up from the nearby creek, and built an entire path lined with them. At first it was meant to be quirky, but over time visitors started adding their own pieces, more dolls, signs, even poems. And that's when the vibe changed, because when you see hundreds of cracked doll faces smiling in silence, the forest doesn't feel quiet anymore. It feels aware. Some say at dusk you can hear whispering. Others say the dolls move, just slightly when you're not looking. Of course, there's no proof. But the unsettling energy, that's undeniable. The Doll's Head Trail isn't haunted in a ghost story way. It's haunted because it reflects us, our waste, our creativity, and our need to make something strange out of what's been forgotten. It's art, horror, and humor, all tangled together in one bizarre Georgia forest. So what do these 5 places have in common? They're all born from contradiction, beauty tangled with decay, art wrapped around madness, tragedy turned into wonder. Bonaventure whispers that even death can be beautiful. Old Car City reminds us that the things we build will outlive us, but in ways we never expect. Passaquan shouts that imagination has no limits. Providence Canyon proves that mistakes can shape landscapes. And the Doll's Head Trail shows that weirdness might just be the most honest kind of art. Each one is a mirror, showing us something about who we are, what we create, and what we leave behind. Georgia isn't just sweet tea and sunshine. It's a state where history sleeps with one eye open. If you ever visit these places, don't rush. Don't just snap a picture and move on. Stand still, listen, let the silence talk. Because every stone, every car door, every painted wall and broken doll has a story to tell. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll realize the weirdest thing about these places isn't the ghosts, or the art, or the ruins. It's how much of us lives inside them. So tell me, which one of these 5 strange places would you dare to visit alone after dark? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you've ever stumbled upon a weird or haunted spot in your state, share it below. Because who knows, your story might just be in the next video.